Leute, seid ihr bereit für die 6 verstörendsten Lost Medias von Chilling Scares? Wir haben noch ein Horrorvideo heute bereit.
The Mysteries Lost episode. On July 9th, 2024, one Reddit user made an extremely unsettling post on the RBI, or the Reddit Bureau of Investigation subreddit, which read, "Help finding a TV episode to possibly solve a murder. I've spent years and hours through Google trying to locate this, and was advised you guys might be able to help. Trying to find what rerun episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired on a specific date/location that I'm convinced had a story of my ex-husband murdering a couple. I was at a hotel in Bakersfield, California on August 17, 2000, and at 11 p.m. they had a rerun of Unsolved Mysteries on the TV. I have no idea what station would have played it. I'm watching them talk about a situation where a smooth-talking stranger gets himself invited into their home, etc. I jokingly kept thinking to myself, yeah, I know someone smooth like that. This person ended up murdering the couple. Fast forward to the end and they show a sketch. I literally sat up in the bed. It was my ex. Yes, he would have been capable of that, and I believe he would have been driving through that area around that time, angry that I just left him." The user also mentioned that they had already contacted the show but hadn't received any answers from them. And despite years of looking online, they haven't found any clues. Now, my first assumption when I came across this post was that it was nothing more than a hoax created by the user. After all, the idea of someone stumbling upon their ex-husband's involvement in a murder during a late...
Das ist halt auch krass. Stell dir mal vor, du bist mit jemandem verheiratet und du findest irgendwann raus, dass dein Ehemann früher mal, als er jünger war, jemanden umgebracht hat. Ohne dass dein Ehemann weiß, dass du es rausgefunden hast oder dein Partner. Stell dir das mal vor. Gibt ja auch Leute, so Kinder, die, als auf einmal der Vater stirbt und sie die Wohnung ausräumen, sehen, dass der Vater ein Mörder war, aber nie gefasst wurde. Das muss so schrecklich sein. Wenn so nicht nur dein Vater halt stirbt, sondern auch noch dein gesamtes Bild, wer dieser Mann gewesen ist, zerbricht.
Night rerun of a TV show feels almost too cinematic. Maybe they had a flair for dramatics, or maybe they were just a fan of lost media. So they crafted their own dark tale with a personal twist that would leave the readers yearning for an update that would never come. However, the more I looked into the case, the less plausible this theory seemed. For starters, I looked through their posts and comment history on Reddit and didn't find a particular interest in lost media, horror, or anything of that nature. The account was also created back in 2018, so it wasn't created recently to fabricate this bizarre story. More importantly, the details given in the post seem a bit too specific to be something the original poster just made up. I went through old TV schedule guides from around that time, and sure enough, a rerun of Unsolved Mysteries did air on the live channel on the 17th of August 2000 at around 8 p.m. But if the Reddit user is telling the truth, how did an entire episode of such a popular and well-documented TV show just vanish into thin air? Especially since the whole show is now available on YouTube, and yet there's...
Hatten eine Haushaltsauflösung von einem 90-Jährigen. Wir haben Kindernacktbilder von... Oh, damn, das ist ekelhaft.
No sign of an episode matching their description. The closest case I found was from a 1994 episode about the disappearance of Jonathan Francia. The investigators working on this case were able to create a sketch of the potential suspect, and it was a man with a long face and a cowboy hat. This did match the description the Reddit user gave in a comment about the sketch they saw on TV. However, this is where the similarities ended between the two cases. To make matters even more puzzling, another person claimed to remember something similar in a comment reading, "I have a vague recollection of this episode as well. I'm going to go through the episodes I've watched on Unsolved Mysteries on YouTube and see if I recognize it." Unfortunately, despite rewatching all of the available episodes, they didn't find anything about the mysterious case either.
Lost Media ist teilweise echt cool, vor allem wenn es dann eben Lost Media ist, die wirklich gefunden werden kann. Es gibt so sehr verstörende alte Serien und so, die Leute beschrieben haben, die einfach komplett ausgedacht nach einer CreepyPasta klangen, aber so wirklich existiert haben.
Though it's entirely possible that Unsolved Mysteries changed parts of their episode after its rerun in August of 2000. As Redditor Rob Frey mentions in their comment, "The reason why it might be so hard to find and why you can't just watch old episodes to find it is the segment may have been changed from what was originally aired. Unsolved Mysteries used to edit segments as new information came forward, especially after a case was officially solved. If they caught the guy who did it, they may have removed a lot of the information from the case that made you think it was your ex. Especially information that was completely speculative or a red herring. As an example, I remember they had a really good segment about a murder in a family who owned a U-Haul, and it went into a lot of the family infighting and drama, and there was at least an implication that a family member was most likely to blame. When they caught the guy and it turned out to be a random breaking and entering, they cut all of the family drama stuff out of the segment and added an update that the case was solved. The only potential flaw in this theory is that if unsolved mysteries
Das ist ein allgemein Bedenken. Es gibt ganz oft irgendwelche Mordfälle, wo... Deswegen, ich habe sehr große Kritik an ganz vielen True-Crime-YouTubern. Im deutschen Bereich, aber auch im internationalen Bereich. Weil die häufig Sachen darstellen, es ist nichts aufgeklärt, aber es wird so dargestellt, der war's. Definitiv. Er wurde nie dafür verurteilt, aber der war's. Und man weiß es nicht. Es gibt so viele Möglichkeiten. Du kannst, wenn es keine Beweise gibt, kannst du nicht jemanden als den Täter darstellen. Sondern das Gleiche, was die Bildzeitung macht. Es gibt keine Beweise und die Bildzeitung ist so, hier ist ein Foto, der war es bestimmt, glauben wir vielleicht auch nicht.
That episode because the case was quote-unquote solved, the Reddit user would have likely learned about their ex getting arrested, but that didn't happen. From what I've seen, the most likely theory is that maybe they saw the sketch on some other crime show and are simply misremembering it as a part of the Unsolved Mysteries episode after so many years. This would explain why no one was able to find the hint, despite scouring every episode of the show from its conception. However, if this turns out to be true, it would also make searching for what they saw on TV that night exponentially more difficult. Unfortunately, unless someone finds concrete evidence, we have no way of confirming or disproving any of these theories. That being said, if this lost media is ever uncovered by people on the internet, it could help authorities solve a decades-old crime and catch the suspect.
Gibt so viele Mörder, die halt immer noch auf
Easily available explosive. During the 2016 Silicon Valley Comic-Con, one of the hosts of Mythbusters, Adam Savage, was doing a panel answering questions from...
True, ich habe eine Netflix-Doku über einen Fall gesehen und es war einfach so anders dargestellt. Tatsächlich bin ich dadurch eher auf Netflix-Dokus umgeschrieben, was True Crime ist. Ja, ich halte Abstand von viel True Crime, deswegen reagiere ich nicht auf True Crime, deswegen mache ich ungern True Crime.
Fans of the show. Near the end of the panel, someone asked him about the biggest disaster he's experienced on Mythbusters.
What is the biggest disaster that you've ever had behind the scenes filming Mythbusters?
Now, this fan was likely expecting something tame, like a crew member spilling something, or one of the devices they built breaking before they could film the episode, something of that nature. However, no one could have anticipated...
Das war so eine geile Serie, ich habe das so geliebt.
...the answer Adam gave for this simple question.
Wondering how specific to get. Well, the biggest disaster we had was Cary Grant and Tori were investigating a easily available material and its supposed explosive properties. What they found out was so explosive that we destroyed the footage and agreed never to say what we learned.
The material they discovered was so explosive and dangerous that they had to report it to DARPA, which is a research and development agency of the United States Department of Defense. Adam also quickly moved on to the next question.
Boah, das finde ich aber mega gut, dass man dann gesagt hat, das zeigen wir nicht, weil wenn du natürlich den Leuten zeigst, hey, das kannst du überall kaufen und es ist fucking Sprengstoff, hat eine unfassbare Sprengkraft, dann gibst du Leuten quasi eine Anleitung, ey, willst du eine Bombe bauen? Finde ich sehr, sehr gut, dass man gesagt hat, das ist uns wichtiger, dass wir vielleicht Menschenleben schützen, dass wir jetzt eine gute Folge rausbringen.
Likely in an effort to avoid giving any hints about what this dangerous material could be. Following that panel, he refused to utter a single word about the lost episode or the material that made them destroy the footage. That silence was held until the 20th of November 2023 when he uploaded a Q&A video on his YouTube channel titled, "These Mythbusters Stories Got Scrapped Due to Danger." The first question in this video was someone asking about footage that was destroyed outside of Adam's control. At first, he gave a predictable answer, explaining how network decisions like cutting scenes to make room for advertisements had led to some lost content. But before moving on to the next question, he brought up the commonly available explosive again. And while he was careful not to drop any hints about what the material could be, he did go into more detail about why they decided to erase the footage from existence.
We were looking at the purported explosive power of a commonly available material, and what we found was something so energetic when we executed it that we agreed to not talk about what we learned. Yeah. It was common enough, easy enough to implement, easy enough to execute that we were like, the world will not benefit from this knowledge. This is the reason you never saw a silencer episode from Mythbusters. Is a potato a good silencer? A pillow? A 2-liter bottle of soda? These are all really interesting questions. And silencers are fascinating technologically. But silenced rounds are not a benefit to humanity.
This makes total sense considering Mythbusters had tens of millions of viewers from around the world. The show built its reputation on demystifying myths and delivering facts, no matter how surprising or dangerous they might be. By withholding the episode, it may seem like they went against their own character. Some might even argue they had a responsibility to release the episode, both for the sake of scientific transparency and to educate the public about potential risks.
Sowas ist immer dumm. Man hat die Pflicht, das zu veröffentlichen. Es gab auch Leute bei diesem Video von Steve Irwin. Es gibt ja ein Video davon, wie Steve Irwin von dem Stachelrochen umgebracht wird. Leute sind so, oh, das muss gezeigt werden. Das ist die Aufgabe eines Naturfilmers. Nein, ist es absolut nicht. Das ist einfach nur Ausreden finden, um seine eigene Neugierde jetzt zu stillen.
Educating people about the potential dangers of a common material could have sparked important conversations about safety and regulation, potentially preventing accidents born out of ignorance. But here's the other side that's hard to ignore. Mythbusters wasn't just a science show, it was also entertainment. Publishing a step-by-step guide on how to weaponize an easily available material would have been, at best, irresponsible and, at worst, catastrophic. The world isn't short on people who might misuse such information, and the stakes were simply too high to ignore. So, the team's decision to shelve the episode was the responsible thing to do. That said, I did some digging online, and speculation about what this mysterious could be is all over the place. Some claim that it's simply flour. For those who don't know, non-compacted flour is extremely flammable and can easily create a sizable explosion upon combustion.
That's fine.
Another chemical that came up in multiple theories was tannerite. It's a binary explosive that is commonly used for long-range weapons practice. It's helpful for marking targets since it detonates visibly on impact. More importantly, it's widely available online. Someone can easily buy tannerite online for relatively cheap without any permit or verification. However, here's the problem with both of these theories. Neither material creates an explosive dangerous enough to justify the drastic steps the Mythbusters team took. For instance, while a tannerite explosion is certainly impressive, it's not nearly dangerous enough to warrant such a drastic response from the Mythbusters team. While researching the topic, I came across a chemical known as triacetone triperoxide, which perfectly fits with what we know about the mystery chemical. For starters, both of the materials required to make triacetone triperoxide are found in most homes. Acetone, which is used as paint thinner and nail polish remover, and peroxide, which is commonly used as a bleaching agent for white laundry. More importantly, even tiny amounts of triacetone triperoxide can do unimaginable damage. Ultimately, unless someone somewhere has a secret copy of that episode and releases it on the internet, we'll never know for sure.
Ich finde gut, dass sie die Folge nie
And given
rausgebracht
how
haben.
Adam described the danger of this
Finde ich sehr, sehr
material,
gut.
it's just one of those rare cases where it's honestly better for the video to remain lost media.
Eine
Jay Leno
Mehlstaube. Ja, Mehl ist fucking explosiv. Von der Roland-Mühle habe ich nichts gehört, glaube ich, aber halt super, super gefährlich immer. Jetzt was, das fandest du gefährlich zu veröffentlichen, aber wir machen das nun? Wie macht ihr? Achso, weil der das jetzt macht? Ja, so sind Menschen, ne?
Late incident. On April 14th, 2022, an anonymous user on 4chan's TV board mentioned a disturbing incident they remembered from an old episode of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. They stated, "One time Jay Leno had a magician on his show and he was doing some sort of cut the lady in half trick. He starts to cut and the lady starts yelling for him to stop like she was actually getting cut or about to get cut, and they start helping her out. I have never seen or heard anything since and never been able to find the clip." The episode in question aired on the 21st of June 2001, and as the story goes, one of the guests on that episode was Arsenio Hall, who was going to perform a classic magic trick of cutting a person in half. However, while he was performing the trick, something went horribly wrong. He accidentally stabbed the woman who was volunteering for the trick. A notable thing about this episode was that Leno wanted to show solidarity with the California power outages. So he hosted his show in a set that was only illuminated by scattered candles and handheld flashlights given to the audience. Maybe the lack of visibility caused Arsenio to make a mistake and harm the woman. Unfortunately, a vast majority of old Tonight Show episodes barely exist in archives and therefore are considered lost media. The June 21st episode is among those lost to time. So there's no way for me to directly verify this incident. But I did find enough.
Es gab aber tatsächlich sehr oft Vorfälle, habe ich auch schon mitgekriegt, wo irgendwelche Shows weltweit Zauberer gezeigt haben, wo halt die Zaubertricks schiefgegangen sind. Weil halt viele Zaubertricks haben immer noch, wenn irgendwas schief geht, irgendeine Kleinigkeit, ein hohes Risiko. Gab es ja auch mal den Typen, der sich einen Nagel durch die Hand gehauen hat? Weil ihm was Falsches gesagt bei diesem Trick, wo er so einen Nagel unter Bechern versteckt hat und hat er auf den Becher gehauen und hat sich den Nagel durch die Hand gerammt. Sowas kann halt immer schief gehen. Viele Zaubertricks sind halt mit hohen Gefahren verbunden.
Enough clues to piece together what might have happened, and there are 3 distinct possibilities. First is that such an incident never actually happened and the 4chan poster was making it all up. However, this possibility doesn't hold up because I found old forum posts from 2001 where people were actively discussing the incident online after watching it. Like this person named Dan, whose post gives more details about what exactly went down. Did anyone else watch The Tonight Show with Jay Leno Monday night? It was a repeat, the one where they turned out all the lights in the studio and had a blackout. Anyways, so Arsenio Hall was the guest, and he was going to do a magic trick where he was going to cut a woman in half. So the woman is lying in the box, and he's trying to shove the blade through, and all of a sudden the woman starts screaming and yelling, "It cut me," and like immediately they cut to a commercial. I was like, what? It has to be a joke. So then when they came back from commercial, Jay seemed flustered, and they didn't mention anything else about the trick for the rest of the night. Did anyone else see this? Does anyone know anything about what happened with this woman? It was so freaky. I also found someone on Reddit who also remembers the incident and mentioned it in the comments of a post discussing the incident, stating, "Holy shit, I thought I dreamed that episode. I've been wondering what happened to that lady for 20 years. So a woman did get stabbed on the Jay Leno show, or at least that's what it looked like to the audience. Which brings us to the second possibility. The woman did get hurt and the incident was later covered up by the network to avoid backlash from the public. However, as much as some people would like to believe this is nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Because as it turns out, the Jay Leno show is not live, it's taped ahead of time. So if they wanted to cover it up, they would have edited that whole thing out, long before the episode ever saw the light of day. Even knowing this, some claim that the showrunners simply forgot to edit this section out and only realized their mistake when it was too late, which is a bit of a stretch. Think of it this way, Jay Leno's show was getting upwards of 7 million viewers in 2001. So even if the network tried to bury the whole thing later, why didn't any of these millions of viewers cause any backlash? From what I've seen, the most plausible theory is that the incident did happen, but it was all part of a skit.
Ich hatte letztens einmal ein Video gesehen, auch über so die gruseligsten TV-Momente. Und da war halt auch in der Folge der Moment drin von Samuel Koch. Und es ist halt, ne, weltweit haben nicht so viele Leute von diesem Fall gehört. Und das ist ein unfassbar krasser Vorfall bei einer der meistgeschauten Serien, die es in Deutschland je gab. Dass jemand da so, ja, dass er live im Fernsehen so eine krasse Tragödie passiert.
And the people who thought it was somehow real were simply not paying enough attention or just didn't realize the dry humor of the scene. This would explain why there was no
Koch, das war der bei Wer wird Millionär auf diesen Springschuhen über ein Auto ein Salto machen wollte und dann irgendwie falsch kalkuliert hat oder halt, ne, wo es nicht geklappt hat und er dann mit dem Kopf aufgekommen ist und dadurch querschnittsgelähmt wurde oder zumindest zum Teil querschnittsgelähmt. Ich weiß nicht genau, wie weit er gelähmt ist.
Roar from the public. And as for the episode becoming lost
ich werde Millionär gesagt, ich meine Wetten das, Entschuldigung. Wetten das, ja, nicht Wer wird Millionär. Habe ich versprochen. Wer wird Millionär? Gut, der Jauch war auch voll verwirrt. Nein, es war Wetten das.
That wasn't a deliberate cover-up, but just a side effect of the pre-YouTube era when preserving TV episodes wasn't a priority. But who knows, if the speculation gains enough momentum, Jay Leno, Arsenio Hall, or someone else from the show's production team might come forward with the truth. Until then, all we have are educated guesses to piece together the mystery. Sharon Davis's Unsolved Mysteries episode. Sharon Eugene Davis was a 51-year-old school teacher living in Dallas, Texas. She lived with her 2 children, Autumn and Ronnie, and their husband of 21 years, Ron Davis, who she married back in 1980. Unfortunately, her relationship with Ron wasn't ideal. Just 5 years after their marriage in 1985, Sharon filed for divorce while describing her husband as controlling and ill-tempered. She withdrew cash from their mutual account and was planning to move to LA with her 2 children. However, soon after filing for divorce, she mysteriously changed her mind and returned to living with Ron. Fast forward to June 11, 2001, Sharon once again found the courage to file for divorce. And this time she was prepared to go through with the decision at any cost. She was planning to move out of her house in the 1900 block of Elderleaf Drive, all while her attorney was trying to obtain a temporary restraining order against Ron, her husband. However, just as everything seemed to be falling into place, tragedy struck. On June 13, 2001, at around 7 a.m., Sharon dropped their daughter at Rapid Transit Park and Ride Station, 2 miles from their home, and went on her way. She was scheduled to attend a training session at Stemmons Elementary, but she never arrived. Even after her children asked their father to report their mother missing on the evening of June 13, 2001, he refused to contact the authorities until a day later, starting a citywide search for Sharon. And after 4 days of searching, investigators finally found her car abandoned in a parking lot near the Southwest Mall in Oak Cliff. The car had a broken window and was also wiped clean of fingerprints. And while all of this was highly suspicious, the lack of evidence meant that Sharon's
Kann man Fingerabdrücke ganz einfach wegwischen? Ich habe mich das immer mal gefragt, ob es einfach möglich ist, dass du einen Fingerabdruck wegwischen kannst mit einem Tuch oder so. Dass du ihn nicht mehr nachvollziehen kannst. Aber eigentlich ist es ja nur Fett auf einer Oberfläche, ne? Da müsstest du es ja relativ einfach wegmachen können.
disappearance was filed as a missing person case. Ron and her 2 children were called in for interviews multiple times, but the investigators weren't able to find any leads from either of them. Sharon's mysterious disappearance 2 days after her filing for divorce also made Ron the prime suspect in many people's eyes. However, the complete lack of evidence prevented authorities from treating him as the potential perpetrator. When asked about it, this is what the lead officer had to say. "We've had a lot of people ask us if Ron Davis, is a suspect. This is a missing person case. There are no suspects at this time. We don't have any criminal evidence, although we fear foul play has occurred. Right now, Mr. Davis is a witness, an uncooperative witness." And after months without any leads, Sharon's case caught the attention of the producer of Unsolved Mysteries, who wanted to air an episode on her case. They produced the segment in mid to late 2001, and it was scheduled for broadcast sometime in spring of 2002. The last thing they needed was an interview from Ron. However, when the producers approached him, he denied their request and was quite stern about it. But when they wanted to air the segment without Ron's interview, he objected again and sent an accusatory letter to the producers telling them not to air the segment on Sharon. And that's where the lost media aspect of this story comes into play. The showrunners complied with Ron's request/threat and scraped the whole thing. And as far as I'm aware, the footage has never seen the light of day. It's entirely possible that a witness could have come forward with critical information after seeing Sharon's story on TV.
Aber warum hat man das dann einfach gefolgt, wenn er sagt, nein, das darf nicht ausgestrahlt werden? Aber sie hätten es doch ohne seine Erlaubnis machen können. Er war ja nicht ihr gesetzlicher Vormund oder so. Haben die dann aus Angst das gemacht, weil er ja gedroht hat?
TV. However, Ron's refusal closed the door on any potential leads that could have changed the course of the investigation. This obviously put a lot more attention on Ron. He was even given nicknames like the most guilty non-guilty man. But it's been 22 years without any updates to Sharon's case. Game in the Sand. Game in the Sand is the name of a shocking short film by the German director Werner Herzog. If you've ever heard of him, you'll know he's famous for pushing boundaries, and not always in a good way. His sets are very well known for being chaotic, and there have even been injuries and deaths during his productions. And apparently he's been this way since the very beginning. You see, Game in the Sand was the second film he ever created back in 1964. However, after completing the film, Werner was so horrified by the footage that he decided to never release it to the public. The only thing we know about the short movie is that it featured 2 children, a rooster, and a cardboard box. It was also filmed in a sandy area, hence the name, and according to Werner, things, quote, got out of hand during shooting. The premise of the movie is also a complete mystery.
Das klingt absolut verwirrend. In der Wüste 2 Kinder, ein Pappkarton und ein Hahn. Das sind diese tiefgründigen Filme, die aber so einen Tiefgang haben, den ich im Leben nicht verstehen werde. So, ich wüsste nicht, was man mit einem Pappkarton, einem Haar und 2 Kindern für einen Film machen kann. Macht doch voll Sinn. Stimmt, hast recht, ich verstehe es jetzt auch voll.
The only thing Werner has talked about is a scene where the rooster was buried in sand up to its neck. Everything else we know about the film comes from speculation, and given Werner's reputation, people online have come up with some pretty wild theories over the years. Some think the rooster suffocated after being buried, forcing the children to watch it slowly die. Others suggest the kids might have killed the rooster in a brutal way, either on their own or under Werner's instructions. This could explain why it was buried in the first place. Some have also speculated the opposite. Maybe the rooster injured the children with its sharp beak or claws, and Werner captured that on film. The problem with these theories, however, is that none of this comes even close to the stuff that's been released under Werner's other productions, like deaths being shown.
Hey, das ist Kinski, oder? Das ist der Regisseur von Kinski-Film?
What could have gone so wrong during the filming of Game in the Sand that was worse than this? Of course, there's the possibility that Game in the Sand isn't real at all, just something Werner made up to add an air of mystery or create hype for his future projects. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know the truth. The identities of the children involved were never made public, and the film's composer, Uwe Brandner, someone who might have been able to shed some light on what really happened, passed away in 2018. So, even if the short film is real, I highly doubt Werner would have a change of heart 60 years later and release it to the public.
Wäre auch gut, wenn das nicht
The
veröffentlicht.
Skyway Man. Ormer Locklear was an American daredevil stunt pilot who became popular in the early 20th century after doing the craziest plane stunt of his time. After footage of his stunt went viral across the country, Ormer was hired for a role in a pseudo-documentary film about stunt flights called The Skyway Man in April of 1920. Put simply, the film was like a collection of the craziest stunts Ormer could successfully pull off in a plane. Filming for the movie began on June 11, 1920 in the LA and San Francisco.
Ja, auch so krass, dass viele Leute das nicht wissen, dass Hollywood früher Hollywood Land als Schriftzug hatte. Dass da nicht nur Hollywood stand, sondern noch Land dahinter.
However, the stunts featured in the film were quite tough, including a church steeple being toppled by Locklear's aircraft and an aircraft-to-train transfer, both of which nearly ended in disaster. But despite the many close calls, Ormer and the other stunt pilots remained unharmed. It was soon time to record the last stunt of the film, which was relatively safe compared to what Ormer had done before. It was going to be a simple spin move that was filmed during the day with special camera filters to make it look like the whole thing was performed at night. However, when Ormer learned that the studio wasn't going to extend his contract beyond one film, he demanded to perform the stunt at night, likely as a desperate attempt to impress the producers. Unfortunately, this is where his luck ran out. On the 2nd of August 1920, Ormer and his longtime flying partner Milton Elliott took flight at night. To make the plane visible to the camera in the dark, the production crew illuminated it with massive arc lights. However, these lights were a bit too bright, so the crew was going to turn them off after the stunts just so Ormer wouldn't be blinded and he could land safely. Maybe it was negligence or simply bad luck, but the crew forgot to turn off the lights. And to everyone's horror, the plane crashed into the ground, killing both Ormer and Milton on impact. However, unlike today, where such an accident would shut down even the biggest film productions, at the time, Ormer's death became the selling point of the film. People flocked to the theater to see the breathtaking stunts, and more importantly, the uncut death footage of the lead stuntman. Unfortunately, the film has since been lost to time. We do have...
Was heißt unfortunately? Ich weiß nicht, wieso unfortunately? Ich finde das nicht schlecht, dass das... Hier, Cengiz Khan sagt das die ganze Zeit so, als wäre das was Schlechtes, dass diese Aufnahmen, wo Menschen vielleicht sterben oder so, nicht gezeigt werden. Das ist doch was Gutes. Warum muss man das denn sehen? Warum muss man denn immer Gore wollen? Warum will man denn immer Tote sehen? Ist doch gut, dass das nicht veröffentlicht wird. Ich habe durch meine Recherchen für YouTube so viel scheiß Gore mir angesehen. Und das sind Videos, die ich nicht vergessen kann. Also warum wollen Leute das immer sehen?
Some evidence which proves that it was real, like a memorial for Ormer and Milton in the November 1920 issue of Screenland magazine. I also found a short review for the film from the same magazine issue which reads, Ormer Locklear's Last Picture, directed by James Hogan. Louise Lovely, now a Fox star, furnishes delightful support. Full of thrills and mid-air stunts, the best picture we've had. The Fox company is giving 10% of the profits of this picture to the families of Locklear and Elliot, who were killed while filming the final scene. As for the film itself, it's become lost media in the truest sense of the word. Over the last century, there have been multiple attempts to locate a copy. All have been unsuccessful.
Okay. Ja, ich weiß nicht, ich finde es gut, wenn solche Videos einfach nicht mehr gezeigt werden. Ich finde, man gewinnt nichts daran, diese Videos zu sehen. Persönlich. Ist einfach nicht meine Welt.